everyone, and welcome to the Pint Pals podcast. We invite you on this journey to explore the world of craft beer. Each episode, we'll take a new step into the craft beer world to help you find the best ones. We'll sample some beers, give our rating on them, and share some laughs along the way. So please join us, and remember, craft beer is for everyone.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pint Pals podcast. It is I, Lucas. Unfortunately, Nate, again, is not able to be with us today, but instead, I have a very special guest. I am joined today by Beau Warren from the brand new Speicies X brewing company in Columbus, Ohio.
Beer project.
Oh, beer project.
It's a tongue twister. But yeah, it's a little different from the usual brewing company. We felt like this was the way to go with it. But yeah, it's not an issue. I get it all the time. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, of course. I'm glad you were able to come on. I recently found out about your brewery in one of the most recent Columbus Dispatch articles. Came out about last week?
Yeah, it came out. I had the interview on, I want to say Monday, or no, it was Tuesday, and then they released it on, I want to say Wednesday, and then the printed version came out on Sunday. So they did a great job. Apparently it was the guy's first gig with or that section. I guess he's the new kind of like food and drinks section person, and I think he did a great job. So I was very thankful for that.
Yeah, no, I love seeing articles about local breweries here in Columbus, and especially when a new one comes to town. Unfortunately, I know there's been at least 3 or 4 in the Columbus area that have recently closed up shop to some extent. So it's good to see some positive brewing news in the Columbus area this month for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's been pretty brutal as an industry as a whole, I think. I remember I was at CBC and I was introducing myself to a bunch of suppliers, and a lot of them were surprised. They're like, "Oh, a startup brewery. We haven't really ran into any." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Well, that's not that's not the best indicator of the industry's status right now." But that's what I'm hoping to stimulate some innovation and collaborate with some breweries, and hopefully we can turn that around. So
when you were talking about innovation, that seemed to be a big category of conversation during your interview with the Columbus Dispatch, and I was very intrigued by it. So what kind of got you into brewing then?
So I mean, like a lot of people, I started brewing in my bathtub in college, and I was, 19 or 20 years old at the time. Really loved it. Beer was horrible. So I just, like, after I made those 2 first batches, despite how terrible they were, I got hooked, and I wanted to learn as much as I could about it. I played football at Virginia Tech, as the dispatch indicated. After I found out that definitely was not my passion, I was kind of burnt out by it. I turned towards what I felt was my true calling. So I walked into that, like, I think it was like next day I flew home and walked into the local brew pub and handed over my application to be a food runner and work my way into the brewery there. So that's kind of how it all started, and then just jumping down really really deep rabbit holes ever since. So yeah, I bounced around quite a bit. I've been in the industry for about 12 years. Ever since ever since I got out of college. I did some sales rep positions, marketing manager positions, the business side. And then I wanted to get my hands dirty. So I was actually, I worked under Ryan Torres at Scioto Downs. He's a great guy, really good brewer. I worked there for 2 years, decided I wanted more responsibility, and I saw the opportunity over at Aslan, and ended up working there for 5 years. So my time there. What's up?
Aslan, as in like Aslan out of Wisconsin? Is that where they're
No,
from? No.
Yeah. It's very confusing. There's a ASLAN, which is out west, and then there's a ASLIN, which is where I worked. So Aslan Beer Company out in Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, their big thing is like volcano sauce. I think that's like one of their top selling beers. They do big pastry stouts, bourbon barrel aged. So I remember I brewed there for about 2 years, and they were looking for a QA/QC lab tech, and I was very interested in microbiology. So they sent me up to Montreal to study brewing microbiology at Siebel in Montreal, Canada for 2 years. I mean, 2 years, 2 weeks. And I just became obsessed with it, and really got into genetic engineering, hybridizing, just plating, and this is all on the side of what I'm doing over at Aslan at the time, which was doing QA/QC plating, making sure that our beers are looking up to spec before we send them out. So they were able to just outfit the lab with most of what I wanted, which was really nice. So that takes a lot of expensive equipment. So it's gonna be a hot second before Speicies X is able to get on that level. Now I did some side projects where I kept some of those organisms and kept them with me. One is banked over with Omega. It's called Longsword. And one of it's a strain that I isolated from supposedly it's a medieval sourdough culture from Wales.
Oh, wow.
And I asked them, I was like, is this legit? Do you guys have like a certificate? And they were like, yeah, we have a certificate and everything to say that Sir, I forget the guy's name, but Sir's something or other, it was a knight, apparently started the sourdough culture. Anyway, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit so I'm not rambling too much here. It kind of leads up to where Speicies X is at, which is why I'm kind of doing the long route. But I'm, at the time I'm setting aside these projects and stuff. And I remember one day, the owners at Aslan decided it'd be cool to, allow me to start up my own brand. So we did and a contract brew for my own brewery at Aslan. So, you know, we went all out. I worked with the graphic designer and, you know, banged out some recipes and came up with the first three beers, the first three batches that we were to release for distribution only. So we did all cans, all kegs, nothing poured out of taps at Aslan. And I landed on Speicies X beer project because I wanted the brewery to see the whole point of the brewery was to find the next greatest, you know, organism to help or species of organisms to help push the industry forward. What's the next big species that makes an impact? So that's where Speicies X comes from. I was actually listening to a podcast. I'm really into like science podcasts, so they were talking about, you know, to prevent a pandemic. And this was before the pandemic happened, which is really funny. And I got the Speicies X name from this podcast. This was in like 2018, I think. No, it was 20. Yeah, maybe it was late 2018 or something like that. And they were talking about, you know, the most important virus that we need to, or pathogen we need to look out for is pathogen X. So I was like, oh, that'd be like a kind of a cool spin. So that's kind of where the whole name comes from. I put beer project because that kind of encompasses, you know, this isn't just a brewery, it's a project. It's a never-ending project that just keeps building and we keep learning. So I thought that fit really well. And, you know, so fast forward, we brewed those first three beers. I think we came out with them in September. We debuted two of the beers mid-September. One of them was a double IPA with a genetically engineered yeast that had it expressed cantaloupe esters and flavors. It's actually Berkeley yeast actually genetically modified that one. And I put Huel melon and I'm trying to think of the other one I put in there. It was like El Dorado or something. And then the other one I went all out. I attained, I think it was 27 different strains of yeast, 4 different species of yeast, and one of them was longsword. So one of them was the 800-year-old, supposedly 800-year-old yeast, and that beer was pretty awesome. It had Kvike yeast in it, had lager yeast in it, it had Uverum in there, which is mostly used as a wine yeast. And that came out amazing. It went through the weirdest evolution. I remember at one time during the fermentation process, it had like a Christmas cookie, like a spiced Christmas cookie taste to it, which completely went away. But I was like, this is so bizarre. But it just ended up being really hazy and a really good hazy double IPA. And then the last one was Del Fresque, and that one was a yeast called Tarullospora del Bracchi, which was caught by White Labs, or White Labs had it banked, and apparently it was caught off of an apple tree in Norway. And This yeast had like a really strong, like Chardonnay oak character, almost buttery, like, but definitely not diacetyl. And a lot of vanilla, like a ton of vanilla. And the thing about this yeast is it under attenuates. So a lot of people use it for low ABV beers, non-alcoholic beers. I decided to throw amylo in it, which amylase enzyme, and it fermented to completely dry. So that's a cheat code a little bit. If you have an under attenuating yeast and you want the beer to be dry anyways, then just throw amylase in there. Like if you want to mess around with a crazy species of yeast, that's one way to do it. So then I added cucumber and lime to it. It's kind of like a mixed wine drink. I thought it came out pretty good. It was definitely different. And the beer was very polarizing. It was either people were all about it or hated it, it seemed like. So after that beer, they all sold fairly pretty well. I decided to take a step back and to just broaden the scope of what Species X could be. That's when I really started getting into data science and machine learning and artificial intelligence. And one day I was just like, you know what, this is a good opportunity. I've always wanted to learn how to code. So I was like, this is a great opportunity to just say screw it and just start learning data science. So I started cleaning tons of code or tons of data from my recipes, made around 200 or so feature columns, or maybe it's 180 to 200 feature columns. And I started studying. I bought some books, ebooks and actual ones. And then I took the OSU how do you say it? Certification of practice in data analytics, and that gave me a really good foundation. So I took that I took 4 of those courses, which was like almost 3/4 of a year or a full year maybe of courses. And I was doing that stuff while also working on the Species X data set and projects on the side. So I was strengthening my foundation as a data analyst and coding, and also working on Species X at the same time. So it was a really good experience. Like originally, I thought I was pretty terrible at math, like horrible. But the main reason for that was because I didn't find like something to be passionate about in math before, and now I'm like 1,000% sold. So I like taking statistics. The second time was a completely different experience. So those classes I learned the R language to code, some machine learning algorithms, and simple statistics, learned Python, and started learning about SQL as well, and using it in Google Cloud Platform, which has been great. But yeah, that's kind of how I built that second foundation. I got the microbiology foundation, and I wanted to build that second arm of Species X, which would be the artificial intelligence side. So I remember running my first model. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but I could see how powerful this stuff is once you get it close. It's pretty crazy. And the thing is, like, you need a domain expert. So if you have someone that you can't just take data and then show it to someone and have them run data analysis on it if they don't understand the domain.
Mm-hmm.
This is where brewers like us, this is where we shine. So being able to understand the data and saying, okay, this, like, the p-value is great, but like the model is saying like this column is more important than the other, like that makes zero sense. And then like being able to understand which features to keep and which features to get rid of as a brewer, as a domain expert, that's where being in the artificial intelligence side, that's where it actually comes to like my benefit was, all the experience I've had as a brewer that just made me a really strong domain expert in terms of, I'm newer to data analytics, but that brewer background really shines in my models that I use to brew now.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Just because it was such a big topic of conversation in the Dispatch article, and maybe for those who haven't seen it yet, and you were talking about artificial intelligence. Where does the artificial intelligence come into play when you brew a beer? Is it more in the recipe side of things, or is it? And it kind of just, you put everything in, it spits one out at you, or I mean, I'm sure that's very rough definition of.
Roughly, yeah. I mean, so I'll try to like break it down for you. It right now it's mostly in recipes, but if you check out my GitHub, which is it's like if I'm trying to explain GitHub, it's kind of like a Facebook. I don't know if it's kind of like a Facebook, but for developers, where people showcase their code and then people can, oh, okay, I'm gonna fork that out and then make my own project from it. I put in like I used Meta's Profit, which is a great algorithm. It's very simple, but a lot of data scientists talk a lot of crap about it because it's so simple and multivariate. So you can have more than one variable that affects or that can train the model in addition to date and time. Now they added this multivariate part of it recently, and I was able to, this was for one of my class projects. I did like a SKU from a single distributor and predicted sales. Not like perfect, but that's something I want to use probably, that just kind of showcases, what directions that I'd like to take it. I'm sure Salesforce probably does a heck of a job. So there's also that, maybe just paying for that artificial intelligence that someone else has, extreme experience in. But for the most part right now, just recipe generation. And so with recipe generation, it's mostly machine learning. But I do have one that's an agent. So I don't use LLMs or large language models too often, but I do use it in the agent. And what it'll do is it'll get sent out, it'll do research, and then it'll present a new recipe, and then it'll review its own recipe and be like, okay, let's pinprick each point in this recipe, review that amount and the type of like adjunct or whatever, and determine is there a way to to optimize that single thing. And then it'll keep repeating that over and over and over again until I just tell it to stop. Now with that, you have to be careful you're not, it's copyright issues, right? So you have to make sure you're obviously not going, like the big ones that, you can't go on Reddit because obviously that's illegal. And then also you want to make sure that you are giving the people who, this agent studied, someone's blog out there. You want to make sure to give them credit. So, and that's what the agent will do. It'll send me back, okay, listen, I made this recipe, but I studied it from these pages. So if I do end up using those recipes, I'm going to present, here's what the agent found out in the world. And then, it kind of like when you're writing a paper, you want to make sure you give credit where it's due. The other 7 or 6 models are all machine learning, or mostly machine learning. Some of them have a deep neural network in there and a transformer neural network, but mostly machine learning. So pretty much it's all internal data. I had to clean it, and it takes, it's probably like 80 to 90% of what you do in data science and data analytics is cleaning. So it's pretty funny that it's very similar to beer when you're brewing beer, because like you're also cleaning 80 to 90% of the time. So that it seems to like that's where it really correlates. But you clean the data, you determine what features that you want included. Each row is a recipe or observation. And what you do is you feed it into the model digests it, it trains on the data. Obviously, the more data, the better. Depending on if you're using depending on what you're using, but most of the time, the more data is the better. And 10,000 recipes are generated. Every single one you can brew, and it matches the feature columns that are in your training set. Wow. And what it'll do is it'll, virtually taste all 10,000 of those recipes. And then obviously you can just press filter and it brings up, or it'll filter it, brings to the top, the top rated beers, or the predicted, I should say, top rated like satisfaction of all the beer recipes. So that's kind of like the quick rundown of what it does.
That's a better explanation that I've received from it. Just trying to read that article and trying to figure it out. And all my experience with AI is like Chat GPT and that thing on Snapchat that like will talk to you.
I that's a thing I keep getting, which there's nothing wrong with using Chat GPT to create a beer recipe, but that's not what I'm doing. But
no, I'm not trying to say that.
No. I know, but I'm just telling you, I've had a ton of people come up to me like, "Oh, you're just using ChatGPT, huh?" I'm like, "Nah." I'm like, it's a lot of it. Like, it's pretty different. It is different. So, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the roots of these models are so deep within all the recipe data that it touches everything in the brewing process. So it's not like I'm going on ChatGPT and saying, give me a hazy IPA, and then it spits out some uncorrelated IPA that it found out in the internet. This is all the feature columns are making it learns what makes an inference, or what predicts the highest satisfaction of customers on the by making an inference on that single feature column. So what's cool about that is you can actually switch the inference column. So you could put like 10 out of 10 for customer satisfaction on the customer satisfaction column. And then you could go over to your malt bill and you can be like, all right, what's going to make a 10 out of 10? Or at least like the highest possibility that I can get with this single recipe. And you can duplicate that recipe like, I don't know, like 10,000 times, with like every single one being like 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pounds. So you can do like stuff like that. I've made a refiner code recently that so I'm like constantly building on my models. So before it was it trains, it makes 10,000 recipes, pulls the best ones up to the top. This refiner code that I've been building on top, it will go to select columns that I tell it to target, and it'll duplicate that recipe to the limit of where that variable can go, such as like mash temperature. You can only that window is only so big. So so it duplicates that recipe like I don't know 20 times, and then it finds the optimal temperature, and then it goes to the next feature column, pH, and then it scrolls through it, clones that recipe again, and then has that 0.01 variance up to like I don't know like a 50 times or something like that, and then it finds that best variable, then it goes to the next one. And so it's just constantly like it's just kind of refreshing to focus on data science sometimes, and then it's refreshing to focus on microbiology sometimes, and then not everything's beer. So but at the same time, it also sometimes it can add a little bit more work. So sometimes I'm working on things a little bit more than I should be, but that's kind of the point of the game. I mean, in my opinion, like I think it increases creativity for myself. Like some of these models are definitely spitting out stuff that I would not be able to think for myself to do. Both because I'm like, well, it sounds good, but I don't know how it's gonna, like, I can look at a recipe and be like, okay, I can brew that. It's gonna be crazy as hell, but I'll brew it and see how it goes. So that's how, like, some of them are like that. Some of them I look at them and I'm like, this is gonna kick ass. Just because it's similar to what I brewed before. And it also depends on guardrails. All the models have guardrails up. This is once again where the domain expert comes into play with data analytics. If you don't have guardrails up, it'll just spit out 20% bourbon barrel aged stouts with coconut and chocolate and dry hop the hell. And I don't want that on my taps, like it's just covering all my taps. So what I do is I train on only lagers or only IPAs or only like fruited sours or just flavors. So, and then what'll happen is if you only train on that, and then you put up guardrails on the back end where it generates the recipes, you'll only get a very specific style of beer coming out the other end. Now, that goes for all the recipe, all the models minus Behemoth. Behemoth is my biggest model. You just shove, like I shove all the data into it, and then it has no guardrails. So its goal is to get from A to B, no matter what. So
Yeah.
like as you can imagine, it's got some pretty like wacky off the wall stuff that I would not be able to come up with on my own to say, okay, let's do that. So like I think I was looking at one, and it was actually I saw a couple. One was a lager, like a crisp, it was a Rice Krispie lager came up with. It sounded pretty good with like marshmallows and vanilla, but it also
Mm-hmm.
had rice in there too, with like a hint of smoke. So like a toasted Rice Krispie lager.
Yeah.
Another one was like, you know, what you would expect, all the highest rated. Everyone loves the pastry stouts, but you know, a lot of what Behemoth is putting out is like these pastry stouts that are dry hopped like to hell. So like 4 pounds, 4 pounds per barrel. And then another thing I've also seen is like a heavy Whirlpool edition. In contrast to dry hopping. So like a really heavy Whirlpool with low dry hopping. So I all that stuff is like very interesting. And like it's not always practical to be doing these wacky off the wall ones, but that's where it kind of that's where like innovation comes in. You know, doing
Mm-hmm.
some stuff that's completely off the wall, crazy, but still practically you can do it. You know, maybe not all the time, but you can do it. So that's where I love using these models. And then, like I said before, you know, not only using it for recipe generation, but for sales prediction to make sure my inventory is, you know, up to date and can survive. And that I'm trying to think like fermentation prediction is another one I'd love to get into. So what I'm doing at the brewery is I'm trying to gather as much data as I can. So I'm throwing probes on them to gather all that data and bank it. So hopefully, you know, one day I can determine, okay, like I can just tell from this data that this beer's something's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like it's gonna have a certain flavor profile, stuff like that. So I I'm gonna start banking that data as well once we get fired up here in January, hopefully. So um I didn't I didn't even like really touch on the microbiology part as much, but yeah, we're gonna be doing some crazy stuff with that as well. So I'm excited.
Oh, what made you uh why'd you choose to go in this direction with brewing?
Um, it's just kind of how I am. I've always been into science. I wanted to. I've always wanted to dive, you know, to where it's not 100% safe
Mm-hmm.
and do something that's off the wall and um, you know, it's risky. You know what I mean? Like it's it's diving into two things that are pretty controversial with the general public. Now that's, you know, I have I feel like I can you know, sway people in my direction, but the general consensus, like there's a lot of people out there that think badly about artificial intelligence and you know, gene manipulation. So that's just kind of how I am. I've always wanted to go against, the grain. No pun intended, but yeah, I've just been always interested in experimenting as well. So, and then the last thing I will touch on is I've been telling people, we're really serious about brewing in space. So this is where the carbon species comes into play. Genetically modifying or hybridizing or mutating yeast to make it more practical to brew in space. And that's what Lunar Base will be. We'll come out with four original or four core beers, two carbon species, two silicon species groups of beers. One of the carbon species beers will be called Lunar Base, and that will be a forever project to make brewing in space more practical. So I know the article on the Dispatch touched it for a little bit, but I'm excited. That's where I want to go. I want to have a brewery, in one of the private space stations that they're planning to launch up there in the next, 10 to 20 years. So that's going to be a really important goal of mine to, despite being, I don't care how busy I am, I want to constantly be researching that, building prototypes. I don't know if I can build one, but brainstorming with people to have someone else execute the prototypes and to really get going on this, because I personally think it's very important. Especially if we're going on that Mars trip. That's a long ass trip without beer. So, and I just think, the civilization is formed around fermented beverages. And I think it's going to be important to keep that around.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, if there's no beer drinkers in the future, I better stop talking into a microphone. So you said you're planning on opening up in January.
Yeah.
I know you're currently in what used to be the old platform space. How are the renovations going there?
It's going good. Yeah, it's getting a pretty big facelift. I mean, if you walk by it, it's definitely looks visually very different, at least color scheme wise. We're doing a pretty heavy, well, I mean, it's not structurally changing on the inside, but well, I guess some of it is, but it's mostly cosmetic stuff. We're ripping down a bunch of metal and putting up some of our own stuff. We're putting all on brand colors and tile, and we're going for like a cyberpunk kind of look to it, just because of how the building looks.
Yeah,
how the building looks already mixed in with what we're doing there. It just fit the bill. So expect a lot of rope lighting, neon, and
it's gonna be like that one planet in Starfield.
Yeah. Oh man, I've been dying to play that game. Is that game awesome?
From what I have played of it, again, you're going to outer space. Meanwhile, every weekend I'm going back to the year 1572 in medieval England. So I haven't been able to dive too much into that, but apparently one of the planets is like this cyberpunk world where it's like the Vegas of planets, essentially.
Okay, now I'm intrigued, and I gotta pull it up on Twitch or something to watch.
Yeah.
We'll be speaking of that, we'll be doing like obviously it's natural to do like hackathons. I think we're probably gonna get into the MLG,
they're
maybe
building
not
a stadium.
MLG, but what's up?
It was I think, announced this year that they're going to be putting in an MLG stadium in Columbus.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
There's
so we gotta hop on that. So
you are right there. You are right there. I'll see if I can track down that article, and I'll send it to you. But
that'd be awesome.
it's like this major, I think it's an energy drink company, but like not one of like the big ones. But they're building stadiums all over the place.
What? Oh,
And
that's
Columbus
cool.
is one of the cities.
I didn't know that. So, I mean, that just tells me, you got Intel and Google, which I was really excited about.
And the Ohio State's got its own esports team.
Really? So,
yeah.
I mean, that's freaking awesome. Yeah, I think we're probably going to dive a little bit into the the gaming as well. It's just everything, like everyone around here seems to be getting more interested in tech, just like me. And gaming certainly fits right into that. We'll also be doing. I want to reach out to Columbus State. I want to reach out to Ohio State, obviously, to see what we can do to collaborate on some studies and stuff like that. I just want to. I want to have a big like synergy between us and the community around us, that's in that same realm as us. It just makes sense. So that's cool about the MLG stadium. I had no idea about that. That's cool.
So I just have like a few more questions here. I mean, if there's something else you want to bring up, by all means. Like,
no, you're good. I've just been word vomiting, so I'm good to hear it.
No, it's great. This is one of I see episodes like this is why I wish Nate, my co-host, he's currently working on his master's through Ohio State for a business degree.
Oh, awesome.
Our end game is to open up our own place eventually, one day down the road. He's going to handle more the office side of things. I'm going to be more in the back side of things, which is fantastic for me.
Very, very, very smart.
Yeah.
That's a good trajectory, I would say. So that's exciting. That's cool.
But I know he would love to be here right now. I know that. Because he's like, I do video games. You can see all my pop finals right there. Like, it's I'm into the nerdy stuff as well. But he's more into like the tech side of things as well. So I know he's gonna be real thrilled to listen to this episode.
Oh, awesome. Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Go on. I was just saying I'll have to meet him at some point. I'll have to meet both of you guys at some point. So
yeah, definitely. We always do the ale trail, so eventually when you're up and running, and I bet be a part of the ale trail. We'll be in there probably quite frequently.
Sweet.
I saw that in the Dispatch article there was a picture of you holding a jar of dirt.
Yeah.
What was that about? Because I read the caption and I'm like, I want to know more about is it synthetic Mars dirt?
Yeah. So going back to 2022. This is back when I was taking a step back and being like, all right, I want to do something freaking wild. So I reached out to I'm gonna give Kai a shout out here. He runs or he helps run astrobotany.com, and we tried to grow hops in Martian regolith, and he was super helpful, and still is very helpful, and connecting me with people that understand that stuff. I failed miserably, and it was so hard. It was a lot harder than I expected. I studied apparently spent coffee grains, so you drink your coffee and you have your leftover grains. Apparently, if you mix that in with the Martian soil, that's supposed to help. If you add like pieces of cardboard in as well and let it sit.
Mhm.
That's supposed to help as well to get like the microbiome in the right area and nutrients in the right area. But man, I could not get it to grow. I tried like 4 times and it was hard. Now, granted, I have a terrible green thumb, so that probably
Uh-huh.
didn't help. But um, it just shows you how hostile it is. And that we're probably going to do hydroponics on Mars and possibly the moon, anyways. At least at first. But I have seen people with success in
There
regards
was
to
a whole
that.
movie about it
So
with Matt Damon.
yeah, I mean, he actually went to Mars, yeah, I mean, like apparently there's certain plants that will grow great in it, but apparently hops do not like it. At least from what I've seen, and um, but I've struggled to find information that would tell me, even when bouncing them off, like these professors I'm talking to and legit astrobiologists. I think my green thumb was just so horrible I couldn't execute on what they were telling me correctly. I'm just gonna. I mean, I have to put that in. I mean, I'm gonna take that L for sure. But I mean, that is the goal. Like eventually, like I have 3 phases, and I told this to the payload when I was talking to payload, and I had that interview with them. I said it's going to be 3 phases. The initial phase is we want to make the recipes as practical as possible in space. Um, so that means decreased amount of resource. You want to save as much resources as possible. How do you do that? Well, you use the amylase enzyme for sure when you can, because granted it'll dry it out completely, but you'll have to use less malt, less sugar. I also use the Berkeley yeast that called Super Bloom, and it's a genetically modified yeast that spits out actual hop compounds into the beer. So that reduces the amount of hops needed. We actually did a reduced amount of oxygen as well.
Mhm.
Actually, going to the tank, um, we did Martian base, which is a spinoff of Lunar base, and we did a collaboration with Aslan, and we actually did no oxygen to the tank. Um, Now, granted, there's oxygen and stuff hitting through the pump, and then I believe we did a little burst of it, but no oxygen on the way to the tank. And then what else did we do? I think that was about it. No filtering, no nothing. Oh yeah, we spunded it as well to capture all the CO2 as we could. So obviously, we're not going to have that much carbon dioxide um, in space. So and whether that's healthy for astronauts in zero gravity, that's still something I need to learn about. So I was trying to concentrate. Okay, let's dial in the recipe. Let's reduce it as much as possible, and then move over to the next phase, um, which would be building a prototype, brainstorming a prototype to actually get it successfully brewed in space and to astronauts and in lower gravity. And then the last phase would be long-term space travel. So, how do we grow hops in Martian soil? How do we grow hops in lunar soil?
Mhm.
What do we need to consider in the long trip from Mars to Earth, or it'd probably be Mars to the moon and back. But um, obviously, phase 3 is way off from now. So my concentrations right now is to link up and find the proper budget for phase 2, and then actually start implementing phase one, which is what we're going to do right off the bat. Phase two, I want to get a trajectory for us as a business and how to get there, and make the right connections with the right people to make that happen.
No, that sounds it sounds very like science fiction-y, but it's but it's happening
it's
right
okay.
now.
Ridiculous is fine.
I don't want to say ridiculous because I'm fascinated by this. I'm like I I just turned 29. I haven't been in craft beer for that long, but I haven't heard anybody else doing anything like what you're doing.
I mean, I'm sure you got Anheuser-Busch is probably, planning something, I'm sure. I think they actually said they want to be the first beer poured on Mars or something. So, and I know they've sent grain to be grown on the space station. So it's time for me to play catch up big time. I think they're already ahead with the big bucks that they got. So
Yeah.
I need to just find the right allies to make it, and obviously in order to do that, it's going to require a lot of money. So in order to find resources, I need to, see, make the right connections once again, and see who's if we're able to pitch that in the next 10 years to get to the right spot. So it's going to be interesting. But
I mean, you already got X in the name. There's somebody out there who's got another space
SpaceX,
program
yeah,
with X in the name, and bought Twitter. So hey, look at that. You're tied to a new social media platform now.
yeah, we're moving away from the just using the X right now because of that. We're going to be doing the ganglion, which is the spider web kind of looking thing, and then we'll be using the whole word species X rather than just the X because of, like you said, Twitter, unfortunately, black and
Yeah.
white logo. And then yeah, SpaceX I actually reached out to. I also reached out to Blue Origin and Crickets. So luckily after the payload article came out, I had a ton of people in the space industry reach out to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I was blown away by that. I was like, I guess I also didn't realize how many companies are out there, but I feel like an idiot, but there are a lot of companies and startups out there that are trying to, that want to see someone like me succeed, which is, it's kind of cool to see that they're willing to collaborate and get moving on it as much as I want to. So I thought that was really, really cool. They see the space industry culture. I'm all about it. I mean, I loved it at first, but this, like, people reaching out and being so friendly and open, like, I thought that was unbelievable. I did not expect that. I expected zero responses, and I'm just saying because it, like, if it was me, I would just be like, look at this guy, like, trying to brew beer in space, but they like I'm serious about it, but it's one thing for them to understand how serious I am. So I thought that was cool.
Well, I mean, that's another space thing. I mean, Ohio, it's the ideal state for it. Don't we have the most astronauts from Ohio? And
oh, that's true. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, do we? I didn't know
John
that.
John Glenn.
I know John Glenn, obviously.
I think
I wasn't sure about other ones.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look like a fool. Oh yeah, Neil Armstrong NASA astronauts tend to hail from Ohio and especially Cleveland. The state's Midwestern twang may even be the reason Apollo 11 astronaut Neil Armstrong was misheard when he uttered one small step for a man 50 years today.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Well, that is cool. That's a cool fact I did not know. Actually, that's the second cool fact, that MLG Stadium.
yeah.
So that's really cool. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited, man. I'm loving Columbus so far. It's just getting me amped up.
Well, the Columbus beer scene is one of the best beer scenes I've seen out there. There's a lot of I guess bonding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's everybody plays nice from what I can tell, and it helps each other out and stuff like that. And then I'm sure you've seen some stuff like that in the Discord group and stuff.
Yeah, everyone. Yeah, I've been helped out by a ton. I actually had Eric from Wolf's Ridge was picking up a keg, because I was just trying to let people know they have some kegs at platform that was left over. And he was like, if you ever need anything, reach out. We're super happy to have you in the neighborhood. And I thought that meant a lot to me. So,
Yeah.
he didn't have to to let me, like, he didn't have to be friendly to me. Like, that just shows you what, what they're about and what the neighborhood's like, and frankly, what the Columbus scene and Ohio scene's all about. Um, it's awesome. I'm excited to get things going.
All right. Well, Beau, thank you very much for coming on. Everybody, where can people find you on any like social media platforms or anything so they can keep up to date with Species X?
All right, here we go. We got all the handles are the same, so that's the good thing. At Species X Beer is the handle, and I am on Threads and Instagram the most. So if you're looking for any type of news, those would be the two ones to follow me on. Twitter or X, same handle. I try to be active on there, but I also don't have a blue check mark by my name, so probably getting not as much, like, I don't know. People probably aren't going to see me as much on there.
Yeah.
The other one is Facebook. I'm on there. Not as active on there, but I try to be. And then I'm on TikTok. Which I try to be active on there. I'm still getting used to TikTok. I'll be honest.
It is a different beast. I will say that.
Also, I will say that I have a different account on that specific one. And then what else we got? I think that's it. Oh yeah, I was gonna say I'm thinking about doing a Twitch stream at some point.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But I don't know. I guess I gotta find time first of all, and then second of all, like how to do it so just so it works. I'm thinking about doing like a Twitch stream from when I'm brewing or doing lab stuff, that sort of thing. So maybe keep an eye out for that. But all that news will be funneled from both Threads and Instagram. So those are by far most active and up to date accounts that I have.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Thank you very much, Beau, for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I'll see you next week.